Everyone, thank you so much for joining. Nice to see such a full crowd. So my name is Femke Jonkmans. I work at Fashion for Good on the scaling of next-gen materials. And I'm joined here by a very great and lovely lineup of experts that really work on changing the future of textiles. So I'm joined here by Paivi, Erapuu, if I say your name correctly, Innovation and Circularity Manager at Armed Angels. Valerie Langer, Next-Gen Strategic Lead at Canopy. Nina Elmersson, Managing Director at Challenge the Fabric, but as well VP of Innovation at the Ekman Group. And then instead of Mikko, we have here Pedro Brito, Senior Commercial Manager at Spinnova. And today we're going to talk about the power of collaboration for implementation, specifically for next-gen materials. And we're talking about this topic today because it's quite an interesting point of time in the industry. We're really at like a tipping point. We've seen that the technology behind next-gen materials worked. We've seen the beautiful pilot collections, the proof of concept, but now the next frontier isn't the lab, it's really the market. And how are we going to scale in the market? We need to build the right partnerships, the right infrastructure, get the bankable demand signals that innovators need to scale. And Fashion for Good, this is really the core of what we're doing, the pre-competitive collaboration of putting brands, manufacturers, innovators together to scale, to solve for the challenges that the industry has. We're seeing collaboration really as a core driver for getting to scale. If it is through collaborative consortia, like our Fiber Club model, or through ecosystem building, like Spinnova is doing, we'll have a great example coming up, or for example, through cross-continental supply agreements, like we see Circ and Circulose expanding their partnerships to China. So the goal of collaboration is simple. It's to leverage learnings and experiences to create demand and get the bankable signals that innovators need to scale. And let's look at the big picture first, Valerie and Nina. So we have collaborative models like Fiber Club or Challenge the Fabric that really brings the whole supply chain together. Nina, why do we need such ecosystems, these large initiatives to really scale next-gen materials? Like what market gap is this filling?
Well, as we see it, there is no shortage of technologies today. What we see it is a challenge of coordination in the supply chain of the different value chains. And Challenge the Fabric is focusing on the supply chain of man-made cellulosic fiber to really bring the different stakeholders together to emphasize and enhance the dialogues, the connections, the network, and the knowledge exchange, because scaling needs to have enablers from all of the supply chain. There is no one can scale alone. We need to do it together in parallel and systematic. So that's why we're trying to do Challenge the Fabric as a value-adding service to meet and to exchange ideas and networking and collaborations.
Nice, great. And then to Valerie, Canopy actually worked together with Fashion for Good on the price parity toolkit, which is a financial model that decouples the price premium of next-gen materials, as well as on our Fiber Club model. Why did Canopy join this collaboration, or why was there a need for a Fiber Club, and how is it solving for scale?
Well, when I look at it, the sea of people who are in businesses, like work for fashion brands or for producers, everybody's competing, right? You compete on the products that you sell, you try to get your market share, but in actuality, you share a lot of supply chains. And so we're looking at, as nonprofits, who aren't actually selling anything, looking at how different times you need to collaborate in different ways in order to move a system. Like when a technology is very new, you need to validate the technology. You only want a small number of entities collaborating at that scale, and then you need to move from validation to pilots, and then pilots to commercial. And so you need different types of collaboration along the way. But if you're working with competitors, somebody has to figure out how to collaborate and how to bring, in a way that's legal, that you have to have a convening entity that can hold the difficult conversations about the difficult topics that have to be overcome, who can hear the different sides of the story, and try and figure out a strategy that will work for the various parties along competing parts of a supply chain. And so this is where we worked with Fashion for Good on innovating methods to reduce some of the friction to get things to come to scale. Things like getting a minimum order quantity. If you only buy 50 kilograms of something, and the majority of textiles are bought by small and medium-sized enterprises, how do you get enough volume that somebody at the other part of the end of the supply chain can leverage enough investment with the confidence that they can sell their 60,000 tons of something, right? So these are challenges that no one, as you said, Nina, no one company can solve on their own, but we're having conversations that are too collaborative can be problematic from competition rules. And so there's the right amount of convening, the right amount of strategy, and the right amount of collaboration. And this is where we find that there are novel collaborations that are emerging, like Fiber Club, which are ways to get MOQs, ways to solve some of the price premiums by creating new ways to create, like bulk buying, for example. And there are other novel collaborations that are emerging that are at different stages. When you need to get to much bigger volumes, how do you get the producers to also collaborate so that you have loads of choice without huge cost premiums on it? That's where you can, we're finding everybody has been having exactly the same problem, and that's where you get solutions starting to really emerge. Minds start to align, issues start to come forward, and they get solved for. That's where we are right now.
Nice, thank you so much. And while speaking on the topic of Fiber Club, we just launched a new Fiber Club with Re&Up. So if you're a brand in the room looking to collaborate, please go to their booth and join. We as well have an open Fiber Club with Altmet, who's also still looking for a few brands to join this Fiber Club model. And we also want to look at what we have here in the room, the reality of collaboration. Armed Angels and Spinnova are in the Spinnova ecosystem. So Pedro, can you maybe explain a little bit about the Spinnova ecosystem and why this was needed to be built?
Yes, so like Nina mentioned, no one scales by themselves. So when we talk about ecosystem, what we mean is that we want to really closely collaborate with everyone across the value chain. And that means from feedstock suppliers to yarn spinners, fabric makers, brands, technology providers. So we want to bring everyone under one roof, provide access to information across all the different partners, and from that learn, improve, and really back up our scale-up. So that's why we created the ecosystem, and that's why the support of brands like Armed Angels is really important for us.
Nice. And then to Paivi, sorry. As a brand focused on sustainability, why did you feel that you needed to join the ecosystem, and how does it help you to scale next-gen materials?
Thanks for the question, and thanks for inviting us also on the panel. So for Armed Angels, this type of consortium and collaboration with innovators, it's not so much about gaining access to exclusive innovation, but it's really just formalizing a commitment with them. And so we have our impact strategy, we have will to actually scale next-gen materials, but it's still a long way to do that. So we know that scaling really takes many years, and we need to commit to tackle hurdles from supply chain, from commercial hurdles together. And so I think it's important for us as a brand to be committed to look through all of those hurdles together. And I mean, Armed Angels alone won't be able to scale the technology. So we see our responsibility still to show that there's demand, and that we can show a real world example of how this fiber can work in reality. So it's a really long-term commitment for us.
Nice, thank you so much. We indeed see that the Spinnova ecosystem is a really great example of a scaling model, because this is proving, yeah, you share the risks with the whole supply chain instead of the innovator having to go into it alone. And that's also where we see that collaboration can also sometimes fail, because often an innovator directly goes to a brand and kind of skips the whole supply chain, but without involving the supply chain, the spinners, the weavers, you can't seamlessly integrate the material. So that, I think, is a really good learning here as well. So Valerie, from your point of view at Canopy, where have you seen that collaboration fails to scale materials?
Where it failed?
Where it fails,
Huh.
yeah.
Well, there's almost too many examples, but that's the nature of innovation, is that you fail forward. There's failure, you learn from it, and then the next thing. And an example would be, the phoenix that rises from the ashes. Would be that the Renewcell mill in Sweden was the first of the commercial man-made cellulosic textile-to-textile pulp. And everybody wanted it to succeed. All the brands wanted it to succeed. The investors wanted it to succeed. The producers wanted it to succeed, and yet it failed, right? And so, what is it? What did we learn from the fact that something that everybody was committed to could not succeed? And it really was that the ecosystem was not built. It was the getting the textile that feeds the mill is bespoke right now. The system for textile to textile aggregation, that's not set up. So you can have a fantastic technology, but if you build a huge mill with a fantastic technology, but your feedstock supply isn't ready, you don't have a system to get it. If it takes 12 months for each brand to then test individually whether this works in their line, and then you have 500 different brands, each demanding that the innovator spend the money to do the test with them, you run out of money pretty quickly before you start selling anything commercially. And so these kinds of failures are why we had to start doing the aggregation. Is it possible for brands to collaborate on information? Not everybody has to do their own pilot. Share the information out of the pilots. Are there ways to aggregate demand and lower premiums? That way there can actually be confident pull-through. Did they go go public too fast, and then they had a bunch of investors who didn't know anything about the fashion sector? And you need patient capital when you're starting big industry to get going. How can the European Union finance textile recycling so that you can aggregate the textiles at the early stage, like they did for other areas of recycling? So these are the elements that all have to work together. And the next iteration of Circulose is going to be better because they had the opportunity to learn from all of that failure and build anew with better collaborations from producers. You were one of the collaborators in that. You took the risk, and we all got the learning, really. So this is where we have to fail forward, is that we build on people who have taken risks, and each of us have to take some risk, but share it. And that way, there's less risk for everybody.
Nice, thank you so much. And Nina, from all your years at Challenge the Fabric, how have you seen the industry change?
Well, we noticed that there is a change in the approach of being more open. There is a more realistic expectation on what's going on. It's a challenge environment, and you can see both competitors but also industry partners discussing this in a more open way, and that's why we started Challenge the Fabric a couple of years ago, because that discussion wasn't there between the different partners in the supply chain. However, it's going quite slow, much more slow than we have expected and hoped for. But we have also identified the need of bringing together the different boxes in the supply chain at a different stage, maybe on the design level through a supplier. What can they learn from each other? So that's also why we created Challenge the Fabric Award to send out new textiles, next generation textiles, also wood-based textiles, to designers to create something, to have that dialogue and earlier on the stage. So we believe that that will be pushing the boundaries even more.
Yeah, exactly. So really learn from each other and share. But Paivi, I think you or Armed Angels as the brand at least has a very strong stance that sustainability shouldn't be kept as like this competitive advantage. What is your message to brands that do really hide pilots and hide their learnings and don't share with the industry so we all can grow?
Yeah, that's a difficult question. But yeah, Armed Angels we always had this mantra, we have nothing to hide, we want to share our successes, but also talk about when something went wrong and how we need to fix it. But when it comes to like next-gen materials, innovations, a lot of brands are really scared to be the first one, but they also don't want to be the second one. So they really need to find a way to be fast, but at the same time, it's complicated. So how we see it is that like the first launch, first pilot that you use in a product, next gen materials, that's just the first milestone. Like the scaling is the actual target that we have. So that's where the real work comes in. Of course, how to then really share those learnings is difficult because we want to kind of stay behind of like what we have worked alone. But I really think that we should really focus on more on the collective advantage of innovation work than.
No, makes sense. Thank you. And then Valerie, if we look at examples from outside of the fashion industry, because of course Canopy is looking at the wider man-made cellulosic space, what examples would you have that really helped scale next-gen materials?
There are two that I was just thinking of as we were coming on stage and you asked me about this. And one of them we're showcasing over at the Canopy booth, which is we wanted to know, can you make man-made cellulosic lyocell with agricultural residues from India? And so we shipped a bale from India all the way to Finland because there was a Chempolis, a technology innovator there, that said they've done it with Polish straw, but the dirt in India is red, which means it has a lot of iron, and we didn't know if the ash would mess with the... So we pulled together H&M, Reformations, CNA, and another one that I will call Brand X for the moment. And they jointly financed this with us and Loudest Foundation. And you can see what the result, it was really good. It was really good, and we were all surprised. And all of those brands have the data. And then we wrote a report and we shared the data. Everybody can see how it worked, right? So that's part of it. But I'm going to take something outside of the fashion industry that when Canopy first started 25 plus years ago, we were just scattered all over. Anybody who was we worked on paper, not in fashion at all. And we were trying to get more recycled fiber into the mix of paper making. So we accidentally stumbled across the publisher of Harry Potter in Canada. They kind of came to us. And we pulled a bunch of book publishers together, but there was no book grade paper made with recycled fiber at the time. So you could not get recycled paper into a book. And we said, how do we do this? And so then this publisher, they're called Raincoast Books, they did the 5th edition of the Harry Potter book. They said, we're going to spend $700,000 if you can find us a mill that will make the paper to the grade, with the spec that we need, but then we'll buy half of that for the Harry Potter book, but you have to get all the other publishers to buy the rest, or else we're stuck with $350,000 extra. And so we're like, oh, okay, we'll figure out how to do it. And so first we had to find a mill. And we asked many mills, and they all said, no, we make wood-based paper. And then we found one mill, Cascade, just north of Montreal, and they put up their hand like, we'll take the Harry Potter contract. Sure, give us that contract. And they made the first paper that met Canopy standard That paper is called Enviro 100. It is still Cascade's top-selling paper. We got all kinds of publishers, Margaret Atwood, Alice Munro, Life of Pi from Jan Martel. We got all of those authors said, we're not doing another book print unless you put it on Canopy's approved paper. And we sold all of that plus. We didn't sell it, the printer that had it on their stockroom floor. And that there are now 400 types of book grade paper made to Canopy's approval, sort of that kind of specification, recycled FSC. And now we're working on agricultural fiber paper for the paper industry as well as an alternative. So this was very successful. Yep. It's now common that you can get it. How did it work? Many publishers went to one major printer and said, if you put it on the print room floor, we'll buy it from you. They took the risk, and then the publishers came in. And that's similar to what would be like a spinner or a tier one, fabric supplier say, we're going to put it so long as the brands buy it. And then we have to push the brands to come forward and buy it.
It's really a neat model that we could copy with the fashion industry as well, right? If we put the brands together and say, hey, we have this demand for this material, recycled next-gen material, and the mill just gets to serve for that demand, and everyone can buy into it.
But it had to meet the specs.
Then they have to meet the quality specs, obviously. This is very important always.
Yeah.
And then maybe Pedro again on the Spinnova consortium. You now have indeed all these partners together, but you're still also to build your large-scale plant. Which partners do you more need in your consortium to really gain the investment needed to build the next steps?
So we, of course, one of the main areas when we're scaling up that we already talked about a lot here is the market demand. So we really need to develop the market demand because that really de-risks the investment decisions, and that's really important. So we work a lot with the brands on that side, and one thing that is very important to get from them is, of course, the initial develops, but also the long-term commitments to fiber volumes. It's not easy to get, and we understand that times are difficult at the moment, but it's really important to de-risk the investment decisions, and that's why we, within our ecosystem, we allow the brands to have a first view into what it is to work with Spinnova fiber, and then they can allow them to commit to bigger volumes from the flagship facility that we expect to have in the coming years. So that's one thing, but the other thing that sometimes that we try to keep ourselves focused, not to lose sight of, is developing the market adoption as well. And that's where working with industry partners is really important. So with yarn spinners, fabric makers and so on, to make sure that they're familiar with Spinnova fiber. We see it as a drop-in fiber, but of course it's still a new fiber and it does require some optimization. And from country to country, from one partner to another, even next door, there are always changes. So working very closely with them allows us to really make sure that we not only improve the fiber quality, but everyone is familiar with working with our fiber. So those partners are also very important to have in our consortium. And then of course it comes to when it really gets real in terms of financing, having someone that will finance the next facility, it's very important. So having partners that can look at the ecosystem, understand what the investment is required, understand where the risks are, but also where the many opportunities are in changing the way that the textiles are made. It's very important. So aligning with financial partners, having them in our ecosystem is also very important to the scale-up.
Thank you. So yeah, we also invite anyone interested in the Spinnova consortium to also join the Spinnova booth. I think you have 2 booths at the event?
We do have one small one here in the Future Fabric side and another one in the Recycling Expo side. We were anticipating them to be a little bit further apart, but we are neighbors, so please stop by. And we are also ramping up the production in our demo factory, so we expect that next year we will have a few hundreds of tons of fiber available. So if anyone wants to book some fiber, get some Spinnova fiber, we'll be happy to meet that demand. And another thing that I didn't mention, but it's also quite important with the ramp up, is that we now have the flexibility to work with different feedstocks, which we didn't have as much in the past. So now not only we use wood pulp as a feedstock, but we also use recycled textile pulp, even leather waste, agricultural waste. So we have a lot of flexibility and that's one of the unique things about the Spinnova technology, is that it's feedstock agnostic.
Exactly, and also expanding into footwear, right?
Exactly, just with the launch last month with Echo.
Nice, thank you. And then Paivi, you actually, really moved beyond from pilot to commercial, a commercial collection with Saxel. How did you overcome the barriers of the next gen material that's so early stage to actually bring it out into a collection?
Yeah, so we, as Arm Angels, is 18, 19 years old brand, and from the beginning we were always limiting ourselves to just use more sustainable materials, starting with organic cotton and then kind of expanding little by little the material portfolio. So we have experiences working with limitations when it comes to materials, and I think we have been building that kind of, we've been training that muscle for many years, how to make work something just with what you have. So we have experience from just from the recent years. Recycled cotton, for example, started as one small product, a little share in the whole collection, and now it's become one of our most important materials in the whole range. So we have 100% recycled cotton products. We have, like, our denims are 60% of all of the materials in our denims are recycled cotton. So we've seen how that works, but that of course took time. And now we're doing it with Saxo. And so I think it starts just with seeing a pilot program that just works out. There's the quality is there, and everything that you need from the fiber is already there. But then now it's about showing up. I mean, I'm the fabric nerd in the company, so I go out and I find, like, oh my God, this is so cool what they're doing, and I bring it to the team, and then I have to talk with the designers, the product managers, the buyers, and convince all of them that this is also their task, and they need to own that fiber transition.
Overcome the premium costs.
Exactly.
Angle as well.
Also, like, we have to solve those issues together. So it's not just me going there and saying, like, no, we have to do it, but they have to, take it as their own issue and start solving. So I've been in many difficult calls with the teams, and we have been solving these issues together, but they have really starting to really take ownership on that. And that's the experience we had with recycled cotton and all different fiber transitions from.
Because we have a question here from the crowd that I think actually links well to this, from Marita. Thank you for submitting. So she's asking, how can brands actually justify the higher cost of next-gen materials to consumers without relying on a premium sustainability pricing?
The price to the end consumers?
Do you need calculated to the end consumer, or how do you justify this pricing?
I mean, it's a process for sure. We have different ways to address it, and sometimes we, when we introduce a new fiber and it clearly has a price premium, we also focus on, like, making the product extra special, so to really highlight what are the consumer benefits on that specific product. And but in the long term, our goal is just to have innovation just kind of disappear into the material portfolio. So when it doesn't have any more, it just becomes business as usual. So that's the goal, the long-term goal. But of course, we have to use all the tools that we have until we get there to make it work.
This is where, with the theme of collaboration, I think this is a really critical point around, because price, in a very price-sensitive business, you want to be creative, you want your values to be expressed, and yet everything is driving you towards the lowest cost, right? In a very highly competitive sector. And so this is where collaborating on materials, but competing on products makes the most sense. Your designs are where you compete.
Exactly.
Right? You want to have a story that's about the environment, but you compete on how you look, not on on the exact thread that's in there. Yeah. But you want to also tell the story. And the more that we can collectively tell the same story, because the fashion village made the material share our values as a village, then you are able to move from pilot scale to large scale. And once you start getting to scale, economy of scale brings the price down. But you have to start somewhere. And in some ways, I've found that brands sometimes get in their own way. One, they want to be the first one to put out that material and be the only one. But then they make a pilot that costs your company so much to produce because you're producing this amount for one particular brand at a particular percentage. And then the next company wants to make it, instead of with cotton, with polyester and only at that percentage. And you have to do it over and over at the highest possible cost. If you just say, go back further into the value chain and say, I want 5% to begin of the recycled textile material that goes into the fiber and then that goes into the yarn. By the time it gets to your garment, it's that much of your garment, but it's better than zero. And back at the other end of the supply chain, that's thousands and thousands of tons because everybody's been able to buy a small amount at a price that they can afford. And so actually to begin this, I think we have to start thinking differently. I don't have to reach 30% and then market a 30% recycled. You're either getting zero of your next gen fiber and having nothing to communicate about in any way, or you start really small with everybody involved, and then you get something that you can communicate, I'm part of an initiative. And then you work with your marketing team about being part of an initiative rather than putting it on the label, right, to begin. And then eventually you get to scale. Circulose gets to scale. Circ gets to scale. And then you start to get the price coming down, and then you can get to your 10%, 20%, and 30%. And that's a 5-year and a 10-year journey. And so you have to have a long view, and you have to work with all of the other fashion village, holds your same, in their heart, the same value that you share, but can do it at the same price. And that's where I think we're really going to get the tipping point, is when the collaboration happens in another part of the value chain that you're allowed to collaborate on, even when you make your designs and you say, I only have like 2% recycling, it's fine. If thousands of brands have 2%, that's a lot of fiber that gets into the mix.
Exactly,
Yeah.
we have to start small, right?
You have to start small to grow
Lots of
big.
brands are aiming for
And
all or
that's-
nothing. But
That's where the turning point is going to happen, when thousands and thousands of brands start small to be able to grow big.
yeah,
And actually having a shared, what does small mean? I think it's a 5%. We just launched something in London yesterday. We had an economist run models for MMCF on what is the tipping point. And 5% is a tipping point. If everybody says, I want 5% in my MMCF fiber, then that enables growth, and at a price point where, when you look at the price of wood increasing over the next number of years because of geopolitics, because of shortages, because the EUDR is saying you can only bring in certain kinds of wood into the EU, that 5% point is actually this very important tipping point where it enables innovators to scale, fiber producers to buy and integrate, and it leads to an uptick where you get that curve. In the S-curve of innovation, it's that beginning point of the innovation is 5%, and then you get this increase. So it's
on
actually
the other
really
side, the
important.
price.
It's really important to strategically agree on what that tipping point is.
Nina.
Yeah, but there is also a need to start the discussion with the policymakers,
Yeah.
to invite them to collaborate, but also discussing, because as you said, the premium for sustainable materials is high, and it's higher than others, and who can be able to take or willing to take that cost. And I think policymakers have the ability to shift market dynamics, and needs to be involved in the discussion going forward.
Well, you're absolutely right. And so things like EPR and the EU deforestation regulation and ESPR doesn't cover man-made cellulosics, and it should, and you should all ask that it should, because then you actually level the playing field more. And also, but even without, let's say it happens in 5 years, if you are a moderately risk-averse company and a moderately risk-averse producer, that 5% tipping point is where the future price of fines for not meeting EPR or ESPR, the future price of wood, and geopolitical shocks like the Strait of Hormuz being closed, which sends the price of urea through the roof, which means that for 3 months, the eucalyptus plantations that MMCF depend on aren't being fertilized, or the cost goes way up. This has knock-on effects on volumes that are available years down the road. So that's when you want to be, you want another fiber in your mix, because it smooths out those shocks. It smooths it out. So start somewhere and then move to 30, 50% later down the road. But you're right, the policymakers, and they have to hear from you. Policymakers have to hear from each of you that ESPR should have man-made cellulosics, that EPR is actually leveling the playing field with other materials.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly. Thank you all so much for all this valuable input. I think we landed on quite a few interesting points today. I think first of all, the structural alignment that's needed, really the power of demand aggregation that we see just in textiles, but also in other industries, and the building of validated supply chains, like don't skip over, of course, the needed partners in the supply chain to also be able to really share that risk. Second of all, we need to drop the ego. Sustainability shouldn't be this pre-competitive advantage. It's still a space where we all need to learn from each other's failures. And finally, we need resilience. It's not a quick game indeed to play, like it takes trial and error and long-term commitment to really get it right. I want to end with a final round of a question to you, and then we also turn to the audience for a Q&A. So just for every one of you, maybe a very short 1 minute, as we are a bit short on time. Where do you currently still see collaboration lacking, and where does it really need more improvement? Is that indeed in policy or between brands or maybe within the supply chain? Where do you see collaboration need more?
Should I start?
Yeah.
I'm still thinking about the paper example.
Yeah.
Just to mention about the example from the paper is like the publishers and the books are not competing on the type of paper. They're competing on the content, and that's what brands should be also doing. Is like, okay, let's like put our heads together about what type of materials actually get us further on our impact goals. So I would also just say, like, if there's brands here and want to get in touch, like, let's talk, because we can really solve a lot of issues together.
Exactly. Yeah, it's indeed the customer doesn't care if it's recycled cotton in your garment or from another brand. Indeed, how can we consolidate demand and scale the industry towards the better direction? Valerie?
Well, I echo that. And then also you need to have trusted conveners who aren't trying to just pitch you in order to sell something. So you can develop relationships with some of the organizations that are working in this space. And we collaborate with Fashion for Good. The Fashion Pact is working on aggregation, and increasingly our organizations are dovetailing our work, so it's not extra work on brands. Like when you work with Fashion for Good on scaling, you actually are doing something that is what Canopy is kind of doing, although we only work on man-made cellulosics, and you work on polyester and cotton and others as well. So we have if you look to those people that are convening the space, it will help so you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. On to you.
Well, we are in Brussels today, right? So I will keep pushing the need of aligning economics and policy to unlock the scaling.
For sure, lots of opportunities there that we also see in other industries.
Yeah, I think I would echo that as well. I think that's very important, because especially in a time where that's not that easy at the moment economically, why would a brand invest versus another brand? Are they losing competitive advantage? So the policy does play an important role there. But I do see a lot more collaboration between even the brands and not competing as much as probably 2 years ago in being first to market, having exclusivity requests and things like that. Those things are diminishing, and I see that they're now understanding more and more open to understanding that, you know, when a new innovator grows, they benefit as well because the economies of scale, the price comes down, there's more availability of that material, and then the consumers are more familiar with that material as well, which benefits everyone. And I would just like to end on what Valerie said, that something is better than nothing. So I think that's a very important point, and it's something that I try to apply to me in terms of working out and exercising. When I'm in the couch feeling lazy, well, 5 minutes is better than nothing. And I think when it comes to material innovation content, that's also very important, because often we put the bar too high as a start, and we should go step by step. So 5%, 10%, it's better than nothing for sure. And in the great scale of things, it makes a big impact.
Yeah, really nice. I see a question coming in that asks, how do you balance sharing information and competing amongst big brands? And how can you navigate this? I think maybe this question is a little bit to you, but maybe from my own experience, I think once we're collaborating on this pre-competitive space, there's actually no need to hide the information indeed. Before Fashion for Good, I used to work at Tommy Hilfiger in the circular business team, where we shared a lot amongst different brands how we're learning from setting up these circular business models, because it's super new in the industry, right? We all had to learn and fail, and that was very open of sharing. But the moment that we at Tommy Hilfiger found a model that actually made us money, that's a little bit, of course, where it became competitive, and then you're a little bit less open in sharing. So as long as we're in this pre-competitive space, I think brands should feel confident to be openly sharing. And when it becomes competitive, that's of course where, brands are still, of course, allowed to keep that competitiveness for themselves. Do you have any other ideas about this topic?
No, I can totally just echo that, because that's also my experience, both in material innovation, but circularity, like circular business models. That's I see already like a lot of brands just sharing knowledge, and that's been so key. Of like, instead of like trying to figure it out in a small team. Yeah,
makes sense. I'm just going to see if I have any other. There's a question that's, what are categories of next-gen materials? What label systems or stamps are required, and what is the issue, education or cost? These are a lot of questions. I'm just going to first do the first one. What are the categories of next-gen materials? Anyone in the crowd wants to take this one specifically?
Heather, we're looking at you.
The different, I don't know.
Categories of next-gen materials.
Oh, that's a great question. I think we often heard next-gen materials associated with some sort of recycled content. I think the way that we see it is all the materials that have a lower environmental impact compared to the conventional available materials. But I don't know, Nina, if you have a...
I mean, it's not new to have recycled cotton, for example, but we know that there are some, the fibers get shorter and shorter. And then we know that the majority of textiles now are blended fabrics, and that makes recycling more difficult. And so increasingly this concept of next gen has evolved into, how do you deal with the actual textile that's out there in the world and not have it become this waste product that causes pollution at the other end of the value chain. So there's that aspect, so the circular textiles for polyester, for recovering cotton, and then for making viscose lyocell, the man-made cellulosic fibers, those types of materials. And then there's novel materials altogether, like microbial cellulose that's grown on food waste that you can then turn into leather, or then you can turn into, go out there. It's all out here. It's fantastic. It's brilliant. So it's a really broad category of things, but basically it's lowering the footprint and and at the end of life not causing pollution, right? So it's a very broad and undefined category, which is basically, let's do better. Let's do a lot better with the impact of materials at the beginning of life and at the end of life.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much for answering all those questions. I see that we're at time. Thank you for all the valuable inputs. And if anyone has any further questions, please feel free to catch us off the stage. Thank you.